Okay, here we go. This is Linda Lattimore. Good morning, everybody. I wanted to, now we're going to share again. Okay, yay, we are finally working it up this morning. We're here this morning to talk about social responsibility strategy. Last week when we got together, we talked about what is corporate social responsibility, because there were so many people that didn't have any idea what that was, that we kind of all talked about what that is and what it means, that it doesn't have anything at all to do necessarily with a corporation. It can be an individual that has social responsibility, or it can be an organization that's a not-for-profit. And this week I want to talk about how we integrate it into either our business or into our organization, because I think people are a little bit stumped by that. So it's always a broad brush on these calls because we don't have a lot of time. I mean, it's just a quick get together. And so if anyone has any questions, catch up with me later. I'm happy to answer them. Also, if there's any legal questions out here, please don't bring them up on this call. Call me at home. I'll put a space where you can get on my calendar at the end of this presentation, because obviously there's no confidentiality here, right? So we can't have any particular questions about your legal issues. All right, so I think we're all really understand what business strategy is. It's that roadmap that we have in our organizations that help us achieve our key objectives, whatever that is for our business. And we hope by having a really strong business strategy that we're going to grow, and we're going to have a strong competitive position in the marketplace, and of course a strong financial performance. And that can include for-profit or not-for-profit businesses as well, right? Because they need to have a strong enough financial performance, since it's not all donor dollars anymore, and they still have, if they're getting foundation dollars, they have to prove how well they're doing. And you want to keep growing. So, but historically, when we thought of business strategy, we only thought of a corporate environment and a value-based business. That means the bottom line. That was the only reason that a corporation was in existence. I used to call it in French the raison d'etre, which means the reason for being, right? Sorry, that's the dog over here trying to get to sit down. So it was to make money, and it was to create a healthy return on investment for shareholders. There was absolutely nothing in corporations that allowed for them to have a social purpose and to contribute back into their communities. And as a matter of fact, there were a whole bunch of lawsuits out there when companies tried to do things that didn't give a rate of return to shareholders, and they got upset. And as a result of that, today there's some new corporate entities coming into place, benefits corporations, that are allowing companies to have both a for-profit and a social purpose in their formation. I think the marketplace has brought in a whole bunch of new companies that I'm calling Renaissance companies. You know, the Renaissance was a time when suddenly there was new art and new music, and it came out of a period that was very, very dark. Well, it hasn't been that great for us in the last, 20 years, with corporations falling apart, and we're not even talking about all the craziness with weather right now. I'm talking about marketplace stuff, CEOs that were doing things like Enron that they shouldn't have been doing. But and now we have really odd political situation here, and so companies are stepping up and individuals are stepping up and saying we need to do business and run our lives in a different way. And so I like to think of these new companies that are coming in as sort of Renaissance companies. They're here to do business in a different way. So they're beginning to include social responsibility strategy within their business. Not just the business strategy anymore. And what that means exactly is they are trying to be conscious and global citizens. And they really are trying to step up to the plate and ensure that they have long-term sustainability, that the future generations are taken care of just as much as the bottom line is taken care of. And so, whereas before corporations were just value-based businesses, I like to think of these new companies as values-based businesses, because values are suddenly important to them. Integrity, honesty, being transparent, taking care of their employees, all those things are beginning to show up and be responsible companies. So you got to stop and think that if price, availability, and quality are equal, or in David's case here, if one nonprofit offers the exact same things as another nonprofit, how do you set yourself apart? And generally speaking, it is the social responsibility initiatives that you have at your company. So, you know, we know that there are a fair amount of nonprofits that are really poorly run. So even if they had a generous and heart-based start to their nonprofit, in many instances, they may not have the business skills that are needed, and so they're not being run correctly. So there's a lot of initiatives in social responsibility. It also includes looking at your financials carefully and also giving back. So I like to try and figure out ways that we can weave these two together if we are now talking about values-based organizations. Some of the things that we look at when we're looking at social responsibility strategy is our mission, vision, and value statements. So it used to be that we pretty much just had a mission statement, and maybe it was all glummed up with a vision statement, but you rarely saw values statements where you might, you really want to talk about the boundaries within which you operate. Suddenly those things are becoming important. Other things we're looking at is what is our impact to our stakeholders? And stakeholders are a really broad brush of people, right? People that have some kind of interest, good or bad, in your organization. In our strategy, we're also looking at things like environmental footprint these days. All of this is part of social responsibility. We're beginning to look at signature partnerships. It's pretty critical that not-for-profits have a signature partnership with a for-profit. Same for for-profits, having a signature partnership of sorts with a not-for-profit. And we're going to go into all of these quickly here in a few minutes. And then, of course, compliance and risk management. How well are you running the organization financially? Are you keeping it out of trouble? Are you managing the funds well? So if we're looking at the mission, vision, and value statements, I kind of look at them as the three legs to the entity. So, and they should be written as three separate statements, not all glummed up together in one. So your vision statement is kind of the why. Why are you even in existence? And you know, one way that you can start talking about it is to say, I envision a world in which, so it's a pretty global picture. I envision a world in which autistic children or autistic adults have a way to find their way into mainstream into the workforce of today. I don't know exactly what David's vision statement is to speak it, but
you're doing pretty good.
Am I doing pretty good? Okay, so I envision a world in which, that's your vision statement. Your mission statement would be, how am I going to get there? Right? It's the vehicle that gets you to the end. Okay, it's kind of like the, not so much the how I'm operating, but the what am I going to do to get there? What steps am I going to take to get there? And that tends to look an awful lot like the steps you'd see in a business plan. But now we have this new thing that is your value statement, and it's the other separate statement, and it's what boundaries am I going to operate within? You know, how do I tell my employees? How do I tell my other stakeholders that I operate within? And those are the how words. The value words are like, I operate within honesty, integrity. I'm trying to think of other how words pop in my head, but other values words need to be in your value statement. Now, none of these statements need to be very long. They can be really one sentence, and at some point in time on another one of these connects, we'll really dig into that one piece so people can start writing these things. And once you have those three, I call them your sort of, it's like a three-legged stool. Now you have your vision, how you're going to get there, the boundaries you're going to operate in, and your employees know what to do now. It's not one of those stupid mission statements that everybody looks at and goes, this just sounds hokey, you know, and then they don't pay any attention to it. Another thing you need in your strategy for social responsibility is you need to do some stakeholder mapping. So really, who are the people that you are touching? Who are the people that you are affecting? Internally, it's probably your employees and it's probably your investors. Externally, it's vendors. I mean, I don't care what kind of organization you are, you have people that you're buying things from, and it's your customers. What's their perception of how you're doing? It's your community, would be external stakeholders. The environment, to some extent, is not a person, but there are organizations that you touch through maybe your supply chain environmentally. Are you using way too much paper? Is there ways that you can change this? So you need to kind of really line out so you can begin your social responsibility strategy and figure out exactly who your stakeholders are and get them on a just humongous piece of paper. And not all of them are going to be really thrilled with you. There can be stakeholders saying really nasty things sometimes about you or your product. They're still a stakeholder. You have an impact on them and they have an impact on you. Once you figure out who all those stakeholders are, you're going to need to probably figure out how you measure your impact to them. And that's good or bad as well, because until you really understand how you're affecting all these people, you can't create a strategy to make it better. So that's pretty much a first step on your social responsibility strategy. What's showing up nowadays is that supply chain has become the great enforcer of social responsibility. And I have to tell you, for the longest time, I didn't even really understand what supply chain was, as strange as that sounds, because I wasn't working for a great big company, and I didn't realize that even as an individual service provider, I have a supply chain. So those are the people that I'm probably buying from, or I'm buying from. They're supplying me the things that I need to keep my business and my organization running. So what we're seeing in all the contracts, the purchase agreements anymore, is that they are pushing down all these social responsibility initiatives, as can you, to the people you buy from. Okay, and that's important because they're saying things like, you know, if you're going to go try and sell your product into Dell, for example, who's also trying to sell their product into Walmart, it's going to have things like you have to have green initiatives, you have to have diversity, you have to have compliance initiatives. And so they've taken on a lot of this self-governing that you would have thought might have been a government initiative. It's not. It's actually happening in the companies. And so you can't even go work with these people unless you sign their contracts that you have all this. Well, you can do the same thing with yours as part of your strategy to make sure that you're going to mitigate some of your risk as well. You can make sure that people that you buy from are also in compliance. And this shows that you are really interested in passing along that values base down the line to other suppliers so that we can begin to clean up this whole line. It's showing up in supply chain also. A lot of companies are saying, okay, I will hire you if you're a women-owned business, if you're LGBT certified, if you're a B Corp. So these other companies are beginning to say, we will go ahead and hire you if you are trying to be socially responsible and you have these particular certifications. We know that the leaner you are and the cleaner you are, the more profits you make, or the better you manage your finances in the case of a not-for-profit who may be getting donor dollars or foundation dollars, who also wants to make sure that they're not wasted in high admin costs, right? So in the case of a manufacturing company, they're looking at things like cradle to cradle. So it used to be they were just worried about recycling at the end. Well, now they're coming in and they're saying, okay, if I have X amount of resources at the beginning, I want to make sure that by the time I get to the end, I'm not just offloading my stuff to be recycled, but everything might have been used up along the way, so I'm back at zero where I was to start. So they're really planning the use of natural resources really well. And that also creates what? That creates a stronger bottom line, whether it's for-profit or not for-profit. And this is not just for products-driven companies, it's for services as well. So if you're a service provider, 9 times out of 10 anymore, I'm a lawyer, but now it used to be that the general counsel's office is the one that would hire their external lawyers. HR would hire people who were doing training, etc. Now a lot of these service providers are being hired through the supply chain, and they're having to sign the same contracts. So I would have to show that I had diversity and green and all these compliance initiatives as well, even as a service provider, not just a product provider. So it's a pretty interesting way that you can also push these down. And if we're in the business of trying to, fix socially pressing issues, I think we have to run our organizations with the same values base. It can't just be the vision, but has to be the mission. How we're getting there the whole way has to be run the same way. In companies, I would think, well, no, not necessarily more manufacturing, but they are looking on it from the environmental point of view. I mean, for the longest time, you only heard of 2 things for social responsibility, and one of them was, were you connected to a charity, and were you environmentally conscious? And now it's a much more holistic approach with the whole company, but they're still looking at whether you're leaving a positive or a negative footprint. I'm just off the top of my head, I would think that leaving a positive means that you're not just, if you took the tree, you're going to put another one in its place, and maybe put 2 in its place. So it's not just LED lights, for example, switching out your light bulbs or recycling. I'm trying to think what other positive footprints would be, but it's leaving it in a better way than when you got there. In terms of community outreach, and I think this is really important for people like David going forward, and that's this idea of creating the signature partnerships. We're seeing a lot of cross-sector partnerships anyway between for-profit and not-for-profit businesses. Government entities are beginning to work with for-profit businesses and not-for-profit businesses to reuse things like, I don't know, the Astrodome in Houston. But we want to make sure if we have a signature partnership, and we'll have a whole talk on that another day, that it's really like an equal partner thing. It's not just the for-profit giving money over to the not-for-profit in terms of a donation, or it's not just them. It tends to just be that they've thought in the past if they got a check, right? But now they're beginning to see, no, that really needs to be where they're lined up because they have the same interest and the same visions for what they want. So if you're at Boeing and you have a bunch of engineers or scientists, it's less likely that giving to the Breast Cancer Association is your signature partnership. Not that it's obviously a great cause, but that perhaps you should be overdoing STEM work and teaching kids in high schools. The Komen Foundation lined up with Avon, right? It's all mostly women, and Avon selling cosmetics and stuff like that. So you want to look really carefully and see that the for-profit is getting good brand recognition. I mean, they're looking like the good guy in the community as well, but also their employees are excited and they're engaged with the not-for-profit. Maybe they're going in and working on volunteer programs because it keeps the employees more loyal to the for-profit if they know that they care and they can also come contribute over, that it's not just a check anymore. And the not-for-profit may say, could you have some of your people come over and help us with our business stuff? Maybe could you send folks over to not just be on our board, but maybe do some financial training or some other things that you might not see in a not-for-profit, because historically they haven't necessarily been viewed as great business partners. It's just a fact. Another way for community outreach for a company trying to figure out what a good social responsibility strategy would be, to survey consumer interest, and figure out what the consumers are interested in terms of a social issue that the company can get involved in. And then they can increase loyalty of that consumer, and probably that then increases their competitive edge, right? And lastly, like I say, there's this idea of community outreach with employee engagement. If your employees are really engaged in a particular cause, they're going to be, and really love what the company's doing, they're going to be great brand ambassadors for that company. The retention rate will be higher, and probably the recruiting rate for new, in this case, millennials who are super heart-driven, is going to be greater too. So there's a certain brand philanthropy that works for the for-profit, and then the not-for-profit. The not-for-profit gets expertise and gets financial money and stuff as well. As far as the talent gap goes, we have a big one coming up in the future. So we need to begin to think about looking at what is the employer brand of the company when they're looking at their social responsibility strategy. How are they going to recruit the next generation, and how are they going to retain that talent? And a lot of it has to do with the programs that have been put in place for social responsibility strategies. So I'm trying to think, you know, any of the benefits programs that you can include, and we'll have lots of conversations about this going forward, but talking about things like having a culture of innovation for your employees, having, you know, a lot of education programs for your employees coming up in the future. A lot of them couldn't get all the way to college and universities and stuff like that. So they're doing a lot of online education these days, and the companies can step in with some of the university programs and bring these kids into the fold this way. So being ready to face the talent gap head on is something that's really part of social responsibility as a whole. So someone has got, can we mute our phones, you guys? Hi, Stacy. So each initiative, what is the financial cost, is super important. So, you know, when you're looking at your social responsibility strategy, it's not unlike looking at a business strategy. You're going to first decide, how much is it going to cost me to have this program? What's the cost of the company if I don't have this program? Is it increasing the bottom line by having a certain social responsibility program? How is it impacting my community and my brand? And does it further my vision and my mission? So you need to take each project and treat it like you would any of your other business projects, and make sure that it weaves in and out with your business strategy, and that it has value to it. I mean, you know, certain financial value, or a decreased risk and a decreased cost, or there's no point in doing it, right? It's got to have some reason for existence, some reason for going forward. So who is on your social responsibility team? Well, you're probably going to have someone from your human resource department. You're probably going to have someone from your communications department, your IT department, manufacturing and global supply chain, finance, legal and compliance. You need to have a bunch of people, because you can't just have someone from HR and say, oh, go create this social responsibility strategy, because each of those other departments has a budget and they have a business strategy. So you're going to have to reach out into those departments and actually bring people in so they're all online and creating this holistic viewpoint. For too many years, we've been very siloed. Everybody had their own budget to manage, and they weren't looking at the company as a whole. And now they need to come together in a group and figure out how they're going to sustain and become, you know, have long-term initiatives so that the company can make it through talent gaps, make it through environmental issues that are coming up, and they need to come together as a team. So you need to pick these folks carefully and then meet with them and have everybody on board. And of course, one of the most critical things that you need to have board and management support. Because if your board is not on board with your board's not on board with this, then you've got a real issue. You're not going to get anything done, and your management as well. And it's particularly true if you do not have a B Corp certified company or a benefits corporation that allows for social responsibility initiatives within their charter. Because if it's just a for-profit that doesn't have those, and you don't have the board of management support, you could end up in litigation, since originally for-profit businesses had one purpose, and that was to make money. So you've definitely got to have the support of those two groups. So let's see. So if anybody has any additional questions, please feel free to make an appointment with me and set up a call with me. I'm going to give you a link in just a few minutes that has all of this information. You can actually grab your phone and just text it, because I know we've got folks on the telephone. So you can text Stay Connected. So you're going to text 44222, 44222, and then type in, or thumb in, Stay Connected. And what you'll get back is this document here, this piece, and it's got how to stay connected with us on Facebook, how to subscribe to our newsletter, how to participate in Monday Morning Coffee Connects, or read the blog, or get the information also about how you can really make an appointment with me, and we can see what we can do to get your programs up and going. So 44222, Stay Connected. And that's just about it for this Monday morning.